Hi friends, Phil here. Today I want to share with you a video of an interview that I was part of. A friend of mine, his name is Bryan Klein. He is the founder and CEO of an amazingly successful company called The Max Challenge. He started it from nothing and has grown this into a national franchise. He is super successful, and I was super excited for him to call me and say I'd love to do an interview. And hopefully, the goal was for me to share some insights on how you can transform your life, because his company is all about physical, mental, and spiritual transformation, and he has done an amazing job transforming his own life, but also transforming those lives of those people that join his organization. And he asked me to share some insights of how I transform my life and how I help others. And so I wanted to share this with you, but let me tell you a little bit about how this all came about, right? So I typically, before I do a training, let's just say, or a video, or even a coaching call, what I always do is I set the intention before the call. And I think this is important for you to understand. You should always set the intention of how you want to show up before any interaction. And right now, I'm doing a video for you. And so before I started this video, I set the intention of who the best version of Phil is when he's doing a video, right? So I want to make sure that I deliver the best version of me. So I set that intention. The other thing that I do is I ask God or the universe, whatever your belief system is, higher power, I ask for help with that, right? To work through me to deliver that message. And I always think about this, and I'm thinking about this now for you, right? There's somebody on the other side of this camera, and there's always somebody in the room, or there's somebody that I'm on a call with that needs something. And I don't know what they need, and I can't possibly know that, but I ask God to help me deliver that need to them. And this is important. I want to be the conduit, right? And so I had heard Oprah Winfrey had said a quote a long time ago, and it resonated with me. He said, and what she said was interesting, and I hope that this resonates with you, because I've been using this in every single interaction that I am dealing with other people and trying to help them to transform their lives and become a better version of themselves. The quote was this, said, God, use me today for a purpose greater than myself, right? And think about that, how powerful that is. So I always set out to do that. If I'm going to be doing a training or even in this video, I want God to use me for a purpose greater than myself. And so I hope that this will help you. So let me get back to Bryan and why we did this interview, because I think it's important to understand. So before I went into this training, of course, I did this. I set the intention. I asked God to use me for a purpose greater than myself, because there's going to be somebody in this room that needs something, right? And I didn't know who, and maybe everybody needs something. I believe that, but it has to resonate. And so I started my training. This was a training on leadership. I believe it was in New Jersey. I was doing a training on leadership. And so maybe there were 30 people in the room, and Bryan was sitting right in the front row, and I didn't know who he was. I introduced myself to everybody there, and he was taking notes, and I was just delivering my training. And this was the moment, right, where, and I didn't know this until a long time later, I had said something, okay, that resonated with him and changed the trajectory of his business and possibly his life, right? And I didn't even know that I did this, right? So later on he called me, asked me to do a speaking engagement for his company, which of course I was grateful for, and I did. He had I believe it was his first convention for his company, and I was a part of that. I was able to go there and speak on mindset and things like that. And then years had gone by, and we stayed in touch through Facebook and connected and things like that, and stayed in touch. And I've been watching his business grow exponentially, and really kind of an amazing story from where he started, right? Transforming his own body and his mind to now transforming the lives of thousands of people. And I've been inspired by him as I've been watching him grow, and once in a while I'll shoot a message and say, hey, I'm really inspired by you and you're doing great work. Well, he decided that he wanted to interview me because of the situation that we're in right now with the way the world is with this pandemic, and he said, maybe you can help me help my people to have a more positive mindset and change the programming. And so we did this interview, which you're gonna be able to watch here now, which really I hope will help you as it helped others on the call transform their mindset, maybe reset some programming and change the programming, and push through even in difficult times, become a better version of you, set better intentions and things like that. And one of the things that Bryan shared on the call was how I had helped him. And so I hope that this video also helps you, and I hope that I can right now have God use me for a purpose greater than myself for you. Enjoy the video.
Hey folks, back again to our Friday motivational talks. I'm extremely excited today. I have a good friend of mine, Phil, all the way from Massachusetts, right?
That's right.
We flew him in all the way from Massachusetts for you guys.
Appreciate it.
Right? But I wouldn't be surprised if we've got some Massachusetts people on here, and definitely some borderline Massachusetts people on here, in Northern Connecticut for sure. But in any case, before we start this interview, I just have to tell everybody, the story goes way back. I signed up for this seminar in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I show up to the seminar along with 25, 26, 27, maybe 30 other people. I'm sitting in the audience, taking notes, listening very carefully. And man, just one thing kind of like hit me right between the eyes. And I always tell every person I come in touch with, like, I go to these seminars all the time. And if I could get just one thing out of it, it makes it well worth it. And I got literally out of this seminar that Phil was teaching, I got dozens of really great ideas, but one thing was a golden nugget that hit me right between the eyes and literally changed the scope of our business from that day forward. And it's something that we still use in our Max Challenge training for our franchisees to this day. So I'd like to thank Phil for that. And I'd also like to welcome everybody and ask you just open up your hearts and open up your minds. We're just going to shoot the breeze here and hope that you guys get a golden nugget that you can implement in your life, make incredible changes as well. So welcome, Phil, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Of course. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. You're a coach.
Yep, I do coaching, so life coaching and business coaching, executive coaching as well. And, I do training seminars and really focusing mostly on mindset and attitude, right? Emotional intelligence, those things. My main focus is to help people grow from the inside out, right? Rather than the outside in. So less tactical, more internal. And so it's mostly, psychology and attitude. It's more about law of attraction. What we think about comes about. That's really the area that I focus on.
That's incredible. And I think so pertinent to what we're going through right now. I mean, firstly, changing from the inside out. I think there's so many, starting with like why people initially join the Max Challenge. They initially join because they want to lose weight and look better and maybe feel a little bit better. But if you don't change from the inside out, it's not going to be a lasting change.
100%. Most people are focused on the external. If I lose weight, I'll be happier. If I gain weight, I'll be happier. That's me. Like if I try to bulk up, I'll be happier. And we're always trying to do things externally, have the house, the car, the things on the outside to feel good about ourselves. But none of that really works, right? You can lose the weight and still feel crappy about yourself. You might feel good about yourself for a little while, right? But until you change your view of yourself internally, then you'll never feel great about yourself. And this happens a lot, right? I've read stories of people that had things done to themselves, plastic surgery and things like that to make themselves feel better, more confident, just more vibrant. And then they do for a little while when they make that external change, but ultimately they go back to their same, sense of sadness or whatever state they were in because they didn't ultimately change their view of themselves on the inside. And so when it comes to weight loss, right, if you lose the weight but don't change your view of yourself internally, you'll find a way to put the weight back on and you go up and down. And many of the people on this call probably have experienced that, right, where you lose it, then you gain it, then you lose it, then you gain it. And the reason is because you haven't actually changed your internal view of yourself. And that is sort of like it's like a thermostat, right, where you've got a setting of how you think you should look. And then when you lose weight, it's different from this setting. So there's a variable and it says, and your brain starts to pick up that difference. It says, wait a second, you don't really believe you should look like this. So you start to unconsciously behave in a different way and you start eating things that you normally wouldn't eat on a diet and you stop exercising. And suddenly you find yourself back to the setting of your thermostat that you were originally at. This is what people go through most of the time. So I work on getting people to change that story in their head so that they can change the results externally.
It sounds so like common sense, actually, right? But it goes much deeper than that. I know personally, I always struggled, let's say, with finances, okay, until recently in life.
Yep.
For the past, 7, 8, 9 years. And, I got to deep thinking about it and I thought to myself, where do I get these habits from? And someone pointed out to me, well, what was, they started asking me questions. What was the house that you grew up in? Like, I said, well, they were maybe, they pay bills later, this, that, the other. And then they just say, well, maybe you're trying to adjust to you're comfortable. So you're subconsciously trying to get maybe you could shed some light on this, but people have a comfortability level, and even though it seems counterintuitive to sense, like, shit, my mind is telling me not to go here because that is not where I'm used to being, even though that's a better place.
Yes. So it's basically your programming, right? So think about this, right? If you don't have what you want, it's because you're not programmed to have it yet. Okay. And so if you lose what you have, it's because you weren't programmed to keep it. And so what you're talking about is, okay, so when I was a child, this was my environment. And your environment essentially conditions you. So we have genetic conditioning, right, where we all understand that, but we have environmental conditioning as well. And environmental conditioning is actually much more powerful than genetic conditioning. It's really simple to understand. I'll share what I mean by this. So you can take a child who's born to two, let's just say, Chinese parents in China, and that baby is genetically Chinese. That's pretty, everyone gets that. But if we take that child away from their parents and we bring them to, let's say, India, okay, and we put them in an Indian household, Indian family, Indian siblings, there are no Chinese people there. Over the next 6, 7, 8 years so a child up until about the age of 6 to 10 is essentially like a sponge. They're absorbing all the environment around them, whatever it might be. And they can't reject any of it, okay, because they don't have the part of their brain developed yet. It's called the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex. So it's not developed yet. It's a part of our brain that allows us to reason and think. So we can either accept things as adults or reject them. A child can't reject, they can only accept. So we have this child now in China, and the environment is different. In India, and the environment is completely different. So over the next 6, 7, 8, 9 years, the child will still be genetically Chinese, look Chinese, everything about the child's genetics will be Chinese. However, all their beliefs, their ideals, their values, their language that they speak, the food that they eat, the church that they attend, the school that they go, will all be Indian, because they were programmed to be that before they could reject the idea. If they could reject the idea, if a child was born with the prefrontal cortex already developed, they would say to these Indian folk, hey, can't you tell I'm Chinese? I don't eat that kind of food. I don't wear those clothes. I don't speak this language. They don't do any of that. They just are programmed by their environment. That's environmental conditioning. And that's why a child can be in a house that there's maybe 3 or 4 languages spoken. And the child will grow up and learn all those languages without any question, because they can't reason themselves out of it. Where if I asked everyone on this call right now to learn a new language in the next year, they would have every reason why they couldn't, right? They talk themselves out of it. So if we go back to your statement about, hey, the house that I lived in, the fact that we were just making ends meet or not being able to pay the bills was my programming. And so I'm programmed to believe this is how we live. This is how we function in the world. So then once our brain is developed, that doesn't go away. It's actually kind of locked in. So now I grow up and I'm an adult and I'm behaving based on the conditioning from when I was a child. And so I don't even realize I'm doing this, but I'm just making ends meet. I'm not making enough money. I'm paying my bills late. All the things that I was conditioned to do based on my environment before I could reject that idea. And this is how people function. So if your parents ate too much and they were indulgent, right, and you were experiencing that when you were a child, you grow up, and more likely than not, if they were the ones that influenced you, right, then you'll be indulgent and you'll do those things. If they were healthy, then maybe you'll grow up and you'll be healthy. It depends on the environment you were in and who influenced you in that environment. And that's why people are struggling, because they're just living the life that they were conditioned or programmed to live, whether it serves them or not. Now, that doesn't mean they can't change it, but most people don't recognize that they can, because they're working on the external, right? Let me do this out here, and never working back on the internal to reprogram or overwrite the old code. And that's the struggle that most people have.
I'm laughing because I've got a reputation and about that. Don't go to lunch and buy a car, right? Like they laugh. Right? Like a couple of times I went to lunch, I came back, I had a different car. They're like, what you do? I'm like, I don't know. I saw it. I was driving by. It just got in my head. But then when I start really thinking about, like, holy cow, these are the habits that get me in trouble, an impulse buy without really looking deeply at my finances and do I need the thing, and I, overload. So, luckily I'm self-conscious enough to kind of like, not really go too far ahead of where I should be. But it is a struggle. And I think it's important for people because we're all human, right? And it's not like I don't think it's like you master this and then you never slip back, like whether it's weight loss or whatever. We're under stress now. And I know, we're exposed probably to foods that I normally wouldn't be exposed to. They're in front of me all the time. And those are triggers. And sometimes I might mess up, but if I beat myself up too much, that's not good either, right?
Right.
We're all human. I mean, there's no super formula that makes you impervious to all this, is there?
No. So these are called paradigms. These beliefs that control us unconsciously based on the programming, right? They're deep-rooted paradigms that were passed on generationally, right? So, if you find yourself, behaving in a way that your parents behaved, or you say, hey, my parents programmed me to be this way, right? I wouldn't call them after this call and say, this guy Phil told me to ruin my life, right? Because remember, they were programmed as well, right? It's generational. So it's deep rooted. So what happens is we overwrite the code, and I had to. Like, I always thought I was going to amount to nothing. I'd be a loser the rest of my life. I dropped out of school. I never finished high school. And so people told me, from a very young age, that I wasn't smart. And I believed that. And I carried that into my mid-30s, me being stupid, right? And think about that. So I'm being told at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I'm not very smart. And now in my late 20s, early 30s, I'm still operating based on that premise, which was completely false, by the way, okay? I'm not saying I'm really an intelligent person, but I'm smart enough to at least function and be successful, but I didn't believe that. So I was operating based on that old programming. You have to understand that still creeps up on me, right? So you're 100% right, Brian. So I've overwritten that code, right, by proving to myself, right, proving to myself that I'm not unworthy and I'm not stupid. However, it's still in there, right? Like I haven't pushed it all the way out yet. So once in a while, it creeps up on me. I'll give you an example. I went into Manhattan to do a training for 3 people in a very large organization. So these were the CEO, the CFO, and the HR director of it was the Designers of America, like this big foundation. People like Vera Wang are on the board, and Michael Kors, and it's pretty elite people. And I'm going there, and I'm thinking to myself, I've got this, right? And so I walk into the building, and I hit the elevator button. I'm shooting up to the floor that they're on, and suddenly I'm having all kinds of anxiety about, man, I'm not smart enough, right? Like it all came back to me in a heartbeat, right? It was literally having a stranglehold on me. I'm like, these people are so brilliant. They're so worldly. They've got, higher education than me. They're going to figure me out. Now they invited me, but I'm still having this story, right? And I'm literally having anxiety, and I almost wanted to go back down. I get to the top, and the door opens, and I'm right in like this lobby area, and the woman at the front desk there recognized me, said, "Hi, Phil." If she had not said that, I would have pushed the button and gone back down. I literally was that scared. But now I'm kind of, I want to say, screwed into it. So I walk in, and I immediately start to change my story. She sends me to the room where I'm going to be meeting with them, and I'm in there, and I'm changing my story. You've got this, talking to me. You've got to you got to talk yourself out of the story that is deep rooted in there. And I spent 2 days with these people, and it went really great. There was no issue, but see, it still was there, even though I do this every day, I'm training with people every day. I'm in front of people that have master's degrees and PhDs, and I don't even have a GED, Brian. But I still do this every day. But yet once in a while, that little paradigm will creep up and grab me by the throat, right? So it's going to happen to all of us. And mostly it happens in traumatic events. So right now we're all dealing with a pretty traumatic experience. So you were working out and exercising and being healthy and doing all those things, and then this happened. It's a traumatic event. That usually pulls the paradigm up to the surface, right? And causes now, not take care of our body, because that's how we're programmed to be. Or when traumatic things happen, we indulge ourselves, or we eat, or we lay on the sofa and we watch Netflix all day long. That's how we were programmed to be. And now the trauma brings it back to us. The goal is to recognize that you're in that state and start to tell yourself a new story to get yourself out of it, because everything starts with your story.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I know, like I was saying before, for me, that's definitely, but putting into context and hearing you explain what's actually happening in my mind, and, that kind of puts into context, like, okay, it would only serve me. Now I don't have to, but it would only serve me to, tell myself a different story. So it reminded me of some of the things that work for me. I know for me, like right behind me on the door are a bunch of medals that I've won throughout the years for different things, right? Or like finishing the New York City Marathon. That was like a big thing for me, right? So I keep those on the door. Every time I open up the door, every time I come in, I close the door behind me. I'm thinking, I got this, right? It's reminding me of the successes that I've had in my life, because if I don't put those things front and center, little reminders of the successes that I've had, then yeah, I'm thinking, I didn't finish college, I wasn't smart enough to this, or wasn't strong enough to get that, or whatever it might be. But there's so many that everybody has, so many successes. Just stack them up one after other. Build your own confidence. I think if you don't build your own confidence, nobody's gonna do it for you.
I love your idea of having the, the ribbons, the medals, the trophies. I don't have any of those things, but right here in my drawer, okay, I have a folder that I keep here, which I go to all the time, and it's basically my folder of thank you notes and letters that people send me for helping them, right? And this really helps me. I put them out on my desk and I read them. My wife's like, "Why do you read those all the time?" And I'm like, because I'm in a place right now where sometimes I don't feel I'm that smart or that good, right? It comes back and creeps up on me. And these prove otherwise, right? I call it debunking your story, right? So if you're struggling in some way, or the paradigm creeps up on you, you have to prove to yourself that it's just not true. So my story is that I'm not smart, right? But these prove that that's just not true, right? If I go to my website, we have the testimonial page there, and I read some of the testimonials, it's just not true. And so I'm debunking until I, again, either overwrite it or at least push it down enough so I can keep moving forward. And that's really these are really good tips for people, by the way, right? Think about the story that's disserving you, whatever that belief is that disserves you, and then find ways to disprove it or debunk it, and then put that in front of your face as much as you can. So let's just say you gain weight, right? Well, put it in front of your face when you looked amazing, right? Put it in front of your face to prove that you can do this. And so these are things that you might think might be trivial, but what you're doing is you're actually embedding it into the subconscious mind, which is your supercomputer. And that's where the power comes from. So even if you don't believe it, like even if I read one of these thank you notes and said, that's not true, it doesn't matter. My subconscious mind picked that up, and hopefully will start to get me back into the right state I need to be in to be successful and do the things that I need to do to continue to keep growing, right? But these traumatic events start the process, right? This is we're in a big traumatic event right now. Don't let the traumatic event disserve you. Know that if there's no struggle, there's no growth. And if there's no struggle, there's no progress. Everyone on this call, when they've had something happen to them that was positive, is because of a struggle. You have to go through struggle to grow. No struggle, no growth. If you're not struggling, I tell my children all the time, if you're not struggling in some way, and you're not getting anxious in some way, and you're not fearful in some way, you're not growing. And so what that means to me is you're not trying to do things that are more difficult than your current state. You're in your comfort zone, and you have got to move yourself out of the comfort zone. And the only way you're going to do that is through struggle. Now, sometimes we can create that by starting a business or starting a new, exercise regimen. But oftentimes they come at us like this COVID-19. It came at us. We didn't expect this. But I look at this as an opportunity for me to grow and skill up and get better at all the things I'm doing, a way to create, not curl up in a ball, but create, innovate, become better, become stronger. Because on the other side of this, there's going to be something better for me. And the only way it's going to be better for me is if I create that for myself and not just say, well, this happened, so it's not my fault, and the circumstance came into my life, and this is the reason why I'm not going to be successful now. And I can't do that, right? This is a time to get busy, sharpening your saw, skilling up, and innovating and creating some different version of yourself for when this thing passes.
That's awesome. I think, I'm just only saying the opposite side of this to point out to people, because as an example, I was just got off the phone with a friend, like literally minutes before we started to talk. And, he feels hopeless right now. He feels, and this isn't a person, this is a very strong person. This is a person that's developed an amazing business, that has a family, that, just an absolutely incredible, very positive person, the entire time that I've known him, which is a very long time, for a decade or more. And it just like hit me in the face. I think maybe people could accidentally give themselves a different story that, right? Like one guy, it's kind of like that picture of the woman, right? There's an old woman and there's a young woman in the same picture. Hopefully people know what I'm referring to. In this situation, there's opportunity and there's also, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all going to have our moments. I'm not I'm not taking that away from anybody. I make you feel less, because we're all going to have our moments, but there is incredible opportunity in front of us if we embrace that opportunity. I do believe, but we just got to be careful that we don't start telling us a story that, this is against me, that's against me, the other thing, look at all the things that are against me and blah, blah, blah. And it's all going to start to stack up. It becomes overwhelming. Start to stack up the things that are good for us, I think.
Ultimately, the reality of the situation is always more benign than the story. The story is always worse than the reality, right? We tend to pile things on that are unnecessary. You just said stack them up. I talk about this all the time, where we create a story in our head about something that's negative. All right, it might be real, so this is real. We're not denying that this isn't real, but we add things to it. We bolt things on to make it worse for ourselves. We don't do this consciously. We do this unconsciously. I had heard somebody say one time, and I use this a lot in my seminars now, so I'll share it with you. Here's an example. If you came to one of my seminars and you're sitting in the chair there, I might say to you, hey, first thing, when we first get started, there are two things that could potentially make this seminar really difficult for you, or maybe, unbearable for you. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek. Obviously, I hope it's not going to be that, right? I say one is a really small thing, and one is extraordinarily large and monumental and could derail you. Maybe you'll leave before lunchtime. And I'll say, here's the first thing, and it's a small one, the one that's really tiny and could make this unbearable for you today. The chair that you're sitting in may not be that comfortable, right? It might be a chair that's hurting your back or hurting your butt, and it's just not comfortable, and you're uncomfortable. That's the small thing. Here's the big one. Here's the monumental thing that could really ruin your whole day. It's the story you tell yourself about how uncomfortable the chair is. See the difference there? That story that you tell yourself is so much worse than the actual chair. Oh, I can't believe how uncomfortable this is. How long do we have to sit here? Am I going to get a break? Does he know how this place, they get the cheapest chairs in the world. You know how much money this place makes? How can't they? Right? And we then we add in something that happened in the morning with our kids or a significant other, and we pile it on until we're miserable about the simple thing, an uncomfortable chair. That's the metaphor for everything, right? So if you think about it, yeah, we're in a pretty difficult spot right now, but that's all it is. What you pile onto it is going to either disserve you or derail you, right? Look, I travel every single week. I travel all over the country. I do seminars pretty much, every single week. And that just, boom, stopped. Talk about your business just completely stopping. Now, I could go and curl up in a ball and cry about that because that's a setback. But I've heard that a setback is a setup for a comeback, right? And so here I am thinking, okay, I need to do something different. I can't just sit on the sofa and wait for the economy to open up, right? And when it does open up, I doubt anybody's going to say, hey, Phil, you want to come in and we're going to put 50 people in a room to do a training? That's not going to happen. There's going to be a huge lag time for me. So what do I do? Do I just sit here and worry about it and make it worse than it is? Or do I get innovative and creative and start converting my clients to virtual and get better at being in front of a camera and skilling up on these things and waking up every morning and taking a shower and shaving and getting dressed no matter what, early, right? I still get up early. My wife said, you get up early still? What? I'm up. I don't want to change my routine, right? I shave every day. This is like insanity to her, right? And I get dressed and I get ready because I don't know what opportunity is going to show up today, but I do know this. If I'm laying around in my pajamas all day, I'm telling the universe, I'm not ready. And the universe conspires, okay, to give you exactly what you want, whether you know it or not. And so if I'm sitting there curled up in a ball watching TV all day and I'm unprepared, the universe is saying, well, you're unprepared. So no one's going to call you or email you with an opportunity. No one's going to do that for you. So I am ready every day for whatever opportunity the universe is going to bring to me. And I'm skilling up and I'm being prepared. I did a video recently and I talked about this where it's like you're on a racetrack, right? And there's the pace car in front of you before the race starts. The pace car kind of paces all the drivers, right? But eventually the pace car moves out of the way and you better be ready to launch. During that time where you're behind the pace car, you need to be, heating up your tires and making sure your engine is running properly and the gears are shifting right. And, all that stuff is happening, preparing for that eventual launch. You've got to be prepared for your eventual launch because it's going to happen eventually, right? And have you been laying around and just, doing nothing? Have you not been skilling up? Have you not been preparing? Have you not been getting up early? And now it's going to be dreadful to get up early. Be in the race while the pace car is in front of you, but be prepared. When that pace car is, you're ready to launch. Otherwise, you'll lag behind. And that's not what we want here, right?
That's awesome advice. I think it's hard, where people get stuck. I know for myself, like oh, it's so terrible. It's so hard. It's easy. These are cliches, but I think if everyone takes a moment to really think about it, we've all experienced what you're talking about from one degree to another.
Sure.
Even like starting this company, the Max Challenge, it was like my mind opened up to it. It was searching. It was looking around. It was there the whole time. I remember my father-in-law always saying to me, he's like, you own these karate schools. They're empty all day long. You need to be doing fitness classes for people in the mornings. Like there's so many people, you could teach them how to lose weight. And I would say, you're crazy. Like, it's a whole other business. There's all these moving parts. I got to know like this, that. You got to be able to manage attrition and retention. And it's just such a job with this. So I was blocking myself, but it was literally in an instant one day where I just looked and I said, wow, there's an opportunity here. Fitness, nutrition, motivation. I could really help people.
Yeah.
I could really help people. And if you don't put yourself in that frame of mind to be open, if your heart and your mind isn't open to the universe, I guess you'd call, you won't be able to receive it. Opportunities all around. It doesn't come easy all the time. So you got to wait. You got to be being receptive to it. I mean, I know I've experienced it in that instance, and I'm sure that there's many people listening who've experienced it from time to time.
Yeah, you basically said to yourself, I'm going to change my story. You had a story that, no, who's going to come, and it's too much work and attrition and all that stuff. That was your story, and you were creating that reality. Once you said, boom, I changed my story, you changed your reality. Look, everything starts with the story in your mind, okay? At the conscious level, we create this story, right? And it spins around in there. Everyone has a story. That story eventually sinks into our subconscious mind and begins to program us, so that's in harmony with that story. The subconscious mind then has to release that story right through this body. And so the body is just basically an expression of whatever the mind is thinking. And so then the body goes into action to perpetuate the story. So whatever you're thinking, right, shows up in your actions, which ultimately gives you results. So if I was to sit with anybody on this call and say, tell me what your results are in some areas of your life, your relationships, your fitness, your finances, I would ultimately know what they've been thinking about and what they believe, because your belief and what you think about and your beliefs are driving your behavior unconsciously. It was William James who said this so long ago. He was a philosopher and a Harvard professor in the early 1900s. And he said something that has been marinating in my mind ever since. And I probably shared it when I met you. He said, whatever you believe, you will unconsciously prove to yourself. Now, the key word is unconsciously. Whatever you believe, you will unconsciously prove to yourself. What he's saying here is if you believe that you're overweight, then you'll unconsciously prove that to yourself by doing things that will create that for you. If you believe that you're late for everything, you're late for meetings, you're late for dinner, then you'll find ways to sabotage your ability to get there on time. You'll do this unconsciously. You're not doing this consciously saying, I want to be late. But if you show up on time, it goes against what? What you believe. And so we're always trying to perpetuate our beliefs. So we've got to change the story and change the belief. So here's the thing, I did a lot of stupid things for most of my life, lost a lot of money, lost some relationships because I thought I was stupid. So the belief that I was stupid caused me to do stupid things. I don't believe I'm stupid anymore. Well, that doesn't mean I don't do some stupid things, but I don't do as many stupid things because I don't have that belief driving my behavior anymore. If I did things that were smart when I had a belief of being stupid, it would go against my belief system, you see? And I don't want to go against my belief system. Even if the belief is a bad, negative, disserving belief, I want to prove that to myself. So what do you believe about yourself? And so people say, well, okay, I believe that I'm overweight, or I believe that I'm not good with money, or I believe that I'm crappy with relationships. How do I fix that? Well, you've identified the belief that disserves you. Now the goal is to create a belief that serves you. Now, so the way that I do it, and I'll give everybody this kind of tip, and I share this with all of my clients, and I do this all the time. I just did it a couple of weeks ago. I write down a disserving belief, or many of them. I recently wrote down about 12 disserving beliefs that I have. And then I wrote that on a piece of paper. And then on a separate piece of paper, I wrote down the opposite of each of those beliefs. So if it's I'm not worthy, I'm extremely worthy. If I'm not smart enough, whatever those beliefs are. So you write the opposite. So the positives of those, the serving belief. Then I took the beliefs that were disserving. I went outside and I got a lighter and I burnt that piece of paper and metaphorically made it go away. Now it was interesting. It was a little windy out and it wouldn't go, right? It took me forever to burn the whole thing. And it was sort of a metaphor of how hard it is to get rid of those beliefs. But I got rid of them finally, and now I focus on the new beliefs. Now I've got to reprogram myself with these new beliefs. So there's two ways I do it. I read them every morning. I read them every night. And I also recorded my voice reading all 12 of those new beliefs into my phone. I have an app that plays on loop. And at night when I go to bed, I put my earbuds in and I let that play over and over until I fall asleep. When I fall asleep, my conscious mind goes out, right? And so my subconscious mind's wide open to receive that message. While I'm awake, my conscious mind is rejecting. It's saying, no, you're not this, you're not. But when I go to sleep, boom, it starts to go in there. At some point in the middle of the night, I pull them out or they fall out or whatever. But what I'm doing is overwriting the old code. Anybody can do this. Now, it doesn't happen in a day or a week or a week of time, but ultimately you start to believe the story. And again, your belief drives your behavior. And so the only way to change your belief is to overwrite it. And so we overwrite it by talking to ourselves, changing our story, reading thank you notes, looking at the ribbons on your wall. These are all ways that we do it by debunking. It's the only way to do it. Or a traumatic event could do it. You could have a traumatic event, a positive or negative one that changes all your beliefs in a heartbeat, but we can't control that, right? It could happen. And you could have a positive, maybe you have a child or something like that, and it changes your whole life and you suddenly stop acting like an idiot, right? Because you want to live longer, you start to take care of yourself and you wear your seatbelt now and all these things. All your behaviors change because you had a child and suddenly you're not smoking anymore. You're not eating crappy food. You're putting your seatbelt on. You're paying attention. Like, how did that happen? A traumatic event. And it can go the other way too. But either way, either debunk it through repetition or a traumatic event. One way or the other, that's the only way you're going to change your beliefs. So you got to get to work.
I love it. I think that's very valuable for people to hear. It's a fantastic reminder for me as well. I know when I was trying to change my beliefs around fitness, that's what we said. And such. Started to work out 2 days in a row, and I would get an X.
We're losing the audio a little bit. I don't know if anybody else is, but I'm losing your audio a bit.
Can you hear me now? Better?
It sounds like you're a cyborg. I'm not really hearing the words you're saying. I don't know. It could just be me, but. Haley.
It's not just you. Okay, that's okay.
I'm not hearing you, man. I see there's a chat from Haley. Maybe it's not just you, so other people aren't hearing you. So.
I hear that all the time. It's not just you. It's not you.
Hopefully we can get you back here so we can finish this. It's been really fun.
Is that bad? Haley, is that bad? Trying to see what I can do. Darn it. Gosh, darn it. I wonder, so we're going through Haley's Wi-Fi, I guess. Unplug your mic, plug it back in.
Yeah, it might be a good idea. Try that.
You know what, actually.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm not using that mic. Okay.
All right, great.
All right.
So back up. I don't know what you said. I missed it all.
Yeah. So Phil was just reminding me of this debunking technique. And I remember when I was getting myself back into shape, I'd have this fantastic calendar, just a regular calendar. I call it a fantastic calendar because to me, it helped me to change my life. So in the morning, I would work out. I'd put a line going from the left to the right of the box for that day. Then at night, when I finished the day and eat nutritiously, I'd put a line this way. That would make an X. And it was meaningless. But when I started to collect those X's in a row, oh my gosh, like the pride and the fear. So literally, that's how I started to change from the inside out. All of a sudden, I went from someone who wasn't an exercise person anymore to someone that learned to love exercise, right? Like I couldn't, I was driving myself to get the X's in a row, which was like an outward motivation, but ultimately it was inward because the feeling that naturally come when you build pride and you feel good about yourself and your endorphins are released and things like that.
That's exactly what's happening we have to, certainly we have to do things externally, right? You have to still change your view of yourself internally, right? It's really simple if you think about it, right? So I said earlier, it's like having a thermostat, right? So let me just kind of clear the thermostat thing up, right? So if you're right now in a room and your thermostat is set for 70 degrees, and it was really cold outside, and you opened up a window and cold air came in. The thermostat has what's called a cybernetic instrument in it, and it picks up the deviation from a set goal. So if it's set for 70 and the temperature drops to, let's say, 55, it'll pick up that signal of the temperature differentiation, and it'll send a message through the wires of the building, your home or whatever it is. It'll kick on a furnace, it'll kick on a fan possibly, and blow warm air into the room until it ultimately reaches 70. So it's seeking 70 all the time. That's what the cybernetic instrument does. Well, your self-image is no different, right? So if my self-image is that I can't earn money, right? And so that's the setting. But suddenly something happens and I earn a bunch of money, or I win money in the lottery, or something happens and all of a sudden I have a lot of money. That's like the window opening up. I haven't changed my view of myself. I still think I'm not worthy of money, but I have all this money. So my cybernetic instrument picks up that deviation from the set goal, no money, but I have all this money in my checking account. It sends a message to the wires of my body, my nervous system, to my brain. I start to alter my behavior unconsciously until I've squandered all the money, right? And we see this all the time. When you see somebody who wins the lottery and 5 years later they're broke, they didn't feel worthy of the money yet. They had the money before they felt worthy, so they didn't see themselves as a person who's wealthy. It could be the athlete that grows up in a poor neighborhood, really poverty, gets the scholarship, then gets the contract with the NFL or whatever, makes a bunch of money, gets injured, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they're destitute. I watched a show recently. I was shocked by this. Evander Holyfield, okay? He earned hundreds of millions of dollars in his life as a boxer, right? He actually owned a home that was worth $20 million. And in this show that I just watched about him, he's living in a little 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment somewhere in Florida. He's completely broke, right? What happened? He never saw himself as a person who was worthy of the money, so he lost it all, right? So it's not that, it's because of his view of himself, his image. His thermostat is always set as being broke. He grew up broke, right? He was poor. And so he had all this money and he never changed his view of himself. So he lost it all. It's no different with weight. It's no different with relationships, right? You could have your setting as, I stink when it comes to relationships. Finally, you find your knight in shining armor, your princess comes into your life, and there's this loving moment, but your cybernetic instrument says you're not worthy of this, and you start to mess it all up, and suddenly the loving relationship is gone. So it always starts from inside first, right? And so we've got to change our story internally. We've got to debunk those old beliefs in order to be able to maintain any success that we have. And that's why people go up and down in weight, up and down in finances, up and down in relationships, and they can't maintain it. And so but it goes the other way too, Bryan, right? If you're truly successful, let's just say in relationships, well, let's use money because everybody can understand it. Let's just say that you are really successful, you have been for a long time, and you believe you're a successful person, and you lose everything, right? Some crisis happens. It won't be long before your cybernetic instrument picks up the deviation from the set goal. I'm supposed to be successful, but I'm losing. And then you start to behave differently. You start to kick up your action. You start to skill up. Next thing you know, you got everything back and more. So it works the opposite way too, right? I've lost everything and gotten it all back again, right? So, and I'm sure many people on this call have too. So if you're really a healthy person, right, and you take care of your body, and let's say you go on a 3-week cruise, right, and you gain 20 pounds on that cruise, right? I went to Italy and put on a whole bunch of weight. Well, guess what? When I got back, I didn't have to think too much about it. My cybernetic instrument kicked in and said, you know what? You shouldn't be that heavy, right? And unconsciously, I began to behave in a different way to get back to my normal setting. And so we have to recognize that you can do anything you want out here in this world. You can change all of this stuff and buy the program and do all that stuff. But if you don't change what's going on inside, nothing will change sustainably. It'll only be temporarily.
That's awesome. I especially felt it to be powerful, the part about, you go on the cruise and then you come back and you're going to naturally start to behave the way you need to behave in order to be the person that you're aligned with. You're always going to come back to that level that you're internally comfortable with.
Right.
That's so important for people to realize, because we're thrust into this situation and we might be thrown off kilter a little bit. Yeah. But if we recognize what's happening inside, we could start to debunk, right, and get ourselves on track. If you haven't been working out, get yourself into working out. If you haven't been eating healthy, we could start to debunk what's going on and get ourselves and reinvent ourselves, really. I mean, chaos is an opportunity for reinvention, which is, I think, everything that you're talking about and training people towards. I think we're coming up towards the end here. Any last word of advice to people how to get through this in a healthy way, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Okay, so three things. Mentally, you've got to change your story, right? You shouldn't have a story of how bad this is. You should have a story about what you're going to do to make it the best it can be for you. So you got to change your story. So that's the mental part of it. Physically, get up early, do what you normally do, get dressed, put your makeup on, whatever you do, right? Get ready. Physically, be there, be present. And of course, right? Skill up, create. You've got to create and you've got to create and you got to create. Don't sit there and worry about what's going to happen. Just start creating new things, new ideas for yourself, a new thought process, a new business plan, whatever it might be. Create. Don't think about when this is over, how am I going to be able to compete, right? Just think about creating. So physical, mental, and actually creating are the three things that I would say you got to do. But the first thing is change your story.
That's awesome. So I know there's a lot of people out there that are hoping to move their life in a new direction. I think personally, I always have a coach. I think it's very important. If someone wants to get a coach, if they want to reach out to you, find out more about the coach process and how to work with you, how would they do that, Phil?
Really easy. Okay. So my website is my name. It's philcicio.com. Hopefully you can type it in here somewhere so they can see it because it's hard to spell, but it's Phil, PhilCicio.com. You can find me there, reach out to me there. I also wrote a book. It's called From Oil Rags to Riches. You can find it on Amazon. It's my story, but it's also lessons that I teach through my story, so my journey, and you can find me there as well. I'm sure it'll help anybody on this call, and I hope you'll pick it up, and I hope you'll enjoy it, and maybe email me and tell me how it may have changed your life.
So awesome. Thank you so much, Phil. I know you're very busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for that nugget of gold all those years ago. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad you use it, man. I'm not surprised, I guess, but I am amazed that you're using it. So thank you for sharing that. You made my day. That just debunked my unworthiness, right? So thank you very much.
Touch base soon.
All right, take care. Thank you. Bye, folks.
See you, everybody. Bye.